Newsfirst Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
Very good evening to you and welcome to Newsline Live. This evening we've got clearly, obviously even, somebody who we need to talk to about what happened at the United Nations. Absolutely. It's a matter of grave concern to everybody, and it is a matter of grave import to our country. We've got here, of course, none other than Dr. Jehan Perera, who is the Executive Director at the National Peace Council. Very good evening to you, Doctor.
Hello.
Now then, I just wanted to ask you, is it very significant or is it just nothing that Sri Lanka, this resolution sort of asking Sri Lanka, I don't want to use the word against Sri Lanka, but asking Sri Lanka to, up its ante and be better at whatever undertakings it's given in the past. Is it nothing or is it serious?
I think it is very serious. I mean, the UN Human Rights Council is where 47 countries of the world meet. These 47 countries are elected by the UN General Assembly of 190 odd countries. They are given the mandate of ensuring that human rights in this world are better protected. So the fact that Sri Lanka has gone is before it, and that these 47 countries sat in judgment over Sri Lanka is very serious in itself. Now, we might not see an immediate consequence of what transpired in Geneva, but I think there are two very serious aspects to what happened there. And one is that the UN has been asked, the UN Human Rights Council Secretariat, the bureaucracy, has been asked to investigate, to set up an office specially to look into Sri Lanka and to look into what's happening in our country in terms of human rights violations, to gather information.
Can I just quickly just interrupt you slightly there? Because my mind is almost automatically going towards the Middle East. Is there such an office planned in Israel, for example, to look into what they do to the Palestinians?
I don't think so. I really don't know, but I don't think so.
I don't want to make light of it, but fine, sorry, carry on.
So that is the first serious consequence of this resolution. The second one is that now that this resolution was passed, Sri Lanka will be on the order paper of the UN Human Rights Council for the next 2 years. So, and the UN Human Rights Council meets 3 times a year.
And in practical terms, what does that mean?
So that means that now they have asked that in 6 months, I believe, we'll have to submit a verbal report on what we are doing about the resolution that was passed. The next meeting, we'll have to submit a written report. And we can be questioned on these. So we are now going to be, for the next 2 years, we are going to be on the minds of the countries of the UN Human Rights Council, and we'll expose to the world what's going on in our country.
But in real terms, how does it affect the people of our country?
Yes, it can also affect the people of our country this way. The masses, the general population can be affected this way. One of the conditions of GSP+, one of the main conditions of GSP+ given by the European Union, which is beneficial to our economy, to our exporters, to all those who work in the export industry. One of the main conditions of the GSP+ is that we meet certain human rights criteria. We have signed, our government has signed covenants with the world.
Let's explain the GSP+. These are concessionary exports.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So
the taxes are removed on them.
Removed, yes. So therefore, if we want to be lean and mean about this all, shouldn't we be, as a country, as an industry, shouldn't we be moving away from these subsidies? They're, in effect, they're subsidies.
Oh, yes, it's a subsidy, but of course we can try and move away, but it takes time to become cost effective because our labor costs.
Being a bit lazy then, our manufacturers being a bit lazy.
No, what it means that our labor has more protection than say in other countries, like in China or India or Bangladesh. Our labor has more protection, so our labor is better treated. they're paid better. So then their costs are higher.
And these will trickle down, hopefully.
Yes. So
unlike the sugar deal, these benefits will trickle down to the people. That's the bottom line.
That's it. And anyway, it means that our economy will be stronger because our businesses will be able to export more to the European countries. Now the problem with this resolution is that it requires us to amend or repeal the Prevention of Terrorism Act. And if we don't do that, then the GSP Plus can be in jeopardy. Not immediately, but over the next year or two. Not now, instead of trying to sort of repeal or amend the Prevention of Terrorism Act, make it more in conformity with international human rights, which is what the European Union wants, which is what the UN Human Rights Council wants. Now what are we doing? We are coming up with something called the de-radicalization law. It's actually quite a dreadful regulation.
That's rather draconian, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very draconian, because what it means is that if a military officer or police officer or a designated public officer thinks that any person is, has a suspicion that any person is working towards violence or working to create disharmony between the communities, then that person, that officer, that public officer or military or police officer can detain that person for 24 hours. Now 24 hours, that person can be just detained before being taken to a magistrate, then taken to the magistrate. And then the magistrate, without having a trial, merely on the basis of what transpires in his inquiry, can then send this person for 1 year to a rehabilitation to a rehabilitation center. Now, I mean,
is this all actually happening, or is this?
No, it is not.
Is this
it is
like
not,
the two reservoirs inside the Singaraja? Is it merely a proposal?
I'm hopeful it is a proposal, but it has been actually gazetted in the government gazette. And it appears, because it has happened in the past, that the president has the power to make such regulations which then are carried out as law. So I'm hopeful that it will not be implemented. Now it's there I think on the order book.
Have you sort of dropped a note off to the Minister of Justice to ask him?
Actually, we want to. Now, my organization, the National Peace Council, we issued a statement. A statement which also covered the issue of the burqa and the madrasas being closed down. Fortunately, the government has said they will not implement it right now. They are going to consider it more, which is very important.
That too is a proposal.
Actually,
so there seems to be lots of proposals.
Yeah, I mean, and in fact, it's very sad that the government came up with these laws, which are in a way targeting the Muslim community just before the UN Human Rights Council took its vote. Because I'm sure.
Thank you very much for all your messages. I'm going to read one of these because this has come out. It came out earlier, actually. Those who suffered from terrorism in Sri Lanka know that human rights is not about human rights. 1 million civilians were killed in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Libya, by the very countries that voted against Sri Lanka at the UNHRC on the 23rd of March 2021. Politics and geopolitics determined the UNHRC vote. How far is that statement true?
No, there is truth in that, because there is geopolitics at play, there is double standards at play, but that does not detract from what we are talking about. That we don't want in our country to have a de-radicalization law where people can be just put away for 1 year or maybe even 2, just because a magistrate thinks, without a trial, without giving that person a chance to defend himself or herself in a court of law, put away. That type of law, we want protection from that, we need it. And also, it is also a fact that in our country there is a problem. There's a problem of what happened during the war. People are still suffering from not knowing what happened to their loved ones. They need some answer. It is true that the end of the war is the best thing. The end of the war is the best thing. And I think this is the problem in our country, that you know, our people believe that the end of the war was the best thing, and it is indeed the best thing. But
since then, successive governments, that means, let's be very specific about this, the government of the war-winning President Mahinda Rajapaksa, followed by the Palanista government, and now this government, appears to me that on these matters that you raise, post-war, that successive governments have become rather blasé about it, and they don't give tuppence about it. That's what it is, isn't it? The Palanistas came in, and if we ever had a chance of addressing these issues, it should have been then. Nothing really, okay, I don't say nothing. I know things like the Office of the Missing Persons happened, the right to information. Yes, 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 but not enough, not enough. They got engulfed in all sorts of other dodginesses. And therefore, to me, all these blessed governments have been blasé about it. That's the whole problem. You're standing there in your National Peace Council, Dr. Saravanamuttu is saying something, somebody else is saying something, they're all shouting their tops off. They might as well stand and dance on their heads along Viharamadevi Park, but the government is having a blasé attitude. Isn't that right?
Well, I think that the last government and this government also, I mean, and there were other governments also, such as Chandrika Kumaratunga's government. They tried very hard. They did try hard. But there was a lot of opposition within our country. The problem is our country is a very polarized, divided one. And
democratic.
It's a democratic one. I mean, in the sense that we go to polls all the time. We go for elections, and we have free and fair elections. But, you know, there is an issue of how do we share power? How do we decide together? Because we are different communities in our country, different nations in a sense. Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims thinking differently.
Dr. Perera, if the people of our country, in the majority, feel, understand, touch, feel this whole problem, in those circumstances, do you think that this government will be around in another 6 months? Or will the people say, no, listen mate, this is not good enough. We don't want you to behave in the way that you're doing. Draconian, greater authoritarianism. Is that what the 20th Amendment was all about? Is that what the two-thirds majority was about?
I think the 20th Amendment was a reaction to the lack of coherence in the past government, because there was indeed infighting between the two coalition partners, and people wanted a strong and decisive government. Of course, they want good governance also. They want a government that acts in the people's interest. And so far, this government has not been really solving the people's problems. But it is also true that it's only a year. And in this year, the government is doing contradictory things.
Perera,
but people still, I think they still have hopes. They have hopes that this government...
This is the whole thing about us Sri Lankans. Oh, it's only 1 month. It's only the first 100 days. It's only the first year. Come on. Time's running out.
Yes.
For people like me, time's running out. Yeah? And for the people, the young in our country, the time is running out too for them. We need to stop saying this, oh, it's only the 100 days. You know, come on, it's only the 100 days. But honestly, if this sort of thing goes on, do you think that NGOs like yours will be able to survive longer than 6 months?
Well, it is also, I know the government doesn't like these things being said, but it is true that we are coming under a lot of surveillance, questioning. I mean, government officials are refusing to sign off on the work we do, to say that they're saying that we are creating problems rather than trying to address problems. My organization tries to bring Sinhalese, Tamils, Muslims together. We want our people to be together, to meet each other, to learn to trust each other, and to solve problems together. But sometimes we are not being permitted to do that. And there's a lot of surveillance now. Police, they came and questioned me also, came to my house.
Because you've been accused of what?
No, not because not to accuse me of anything, but to say that they had heard that my office is in my National Peace Council is in my apartment. And they came there, and I said, no, it's not in my apartment. It's somewhere else. It's in Kohuwala. And police have come to Kohuwala also, I said. Then they said they don't know that, but they were told that it's in my house, and they came. And then I said,
is there something wrong if it's in your house? Have you not paid the business tax? Right?
No, because naturally I don't want police to come to my house.
Yeah.
My kids will get worried. Everyone will get worried. So then, actually, they're
So
very
are you
polite. They're
saying
very
that-
polite. They're very polite.
Yes, but is this a subtle kind of intimidation?
Yeah, I think so.
Is that how you view it?
In my case, it was subtle. It was subtle. It was very nicely done, politely done, and they didn't come to my office, although I invited them to come to the office. But in other cases, people do get frightened. If someone is in the north and the east, and a woman, and the police and the military come to question, they get very frightened. So I know the government also has, this is a post-war country. We just had a huge act of terrorism.
growing fear psychosis?
No, there is fear, and we have still not got over the war and Easter Sunday. All that is there. So we understand if the government needs to.
Not got over the war. It's finished in 2009. We're 2021. It's 12 years later. Yeah. Look, on this note, let's go and have a quick peek at the headlines for this evening's primetime news. When we come back, I'm going to ask you, as a member of the government of Sri Lanka delegation to Geneva in 2016, how do you see the heavy defeat suffered by this government, the SLPP government, on Tuesday in Geneva? Back after this short break.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shauketaly.
Welcome back to Newsline Live. I do wish we had several minutes more because the messages have come in thick and fast. One of them, I love this message, by the way. It's not a question, it's merely a statement. It says that when the police turned up to your place and started asking you questions, the suggestion from one of our viewers is that you should have called News First, and we could have then we could have reported it. Next time it happens, please call us, because then it can all be done. And do press your record button as soon as it happens. People are asking about the foreign minister's calculations, assertions, if you like, that the people who brought these things, the co-sponsors, couldn't get 25. Is that some sort of grave victory, is it?
No, clearly, Faraz, it was a defeat. It's a bad defeat. But I think maybe the foreign minister is making the point that those 14 countries that abstained really didn't want to vote against Sri Lanka. They didn't want to vote, I think. But unfortunately, it's very sad that we didn't give them a chance to vote for us. They didn't want to vote against us. We didn't give them the chance to vote for us.
Let me read this. Let me read this. Dr. Perera, with all respect, what crap is the Minister of Foreign Affairs talking about that we have not lost? Is he trying to bluff the masses again?
I think maybe, if you view it charitably, he's trying to keep the morale of the government and the people high. But I hope, but they must realize, it is indeed very serious. It need not have been like this. About 6 months ago, there was a thinking that the Western countries will not want to push a resolution on us because of the concern that of China, that we will fall into the lap of China, and also that certain reforms would take place in our country. And there was, at the beginning of this process, there was the talk of a consensus resolution. I wish we took that path of a consensus resolution. Now we have not, and now we have to face a very difficult situation where for the next 2 years, the internationals will be monitoring us. The UN Human Rights Council will be monitoring us.
So now that the government of Sri Lanka has suffered this debacle, this disaster, can you explain a way forward? Can you articulate a way forward? Is there a way forward other than complying?
Well, we have to show goodwill. We have to. Well, first of all, we have to accept that there are challenges, that there are problems in our country. We have to accept that our country, that our people, our Sinhala people, our Tamil people, our Muslim people have their own grievances. They all have their own fears. We have to realize that the Sinhala people have their fears. In the morning, I was in Putlam at the opening of a new chaitya in the temple. And the Buddhist monk who addressed the gathering, one of the things he said that now that there are many temples in the country, but not enough Buddhist monks. And he said the Sinhalese are not having enough children, and they should have more children so that more monks can go to the temple. And he also said that I have a fear, he said, that the Sinhalese race will disappear. So there is that concern among the Sinhala population.
Sure.
So the government has to, the government also comes from that ethos. So we have to keep those in mind.
Well,
but we have to also...
Why aren't the majority happy that their president was elected without the help of the minorities? And we have the president himself who said that.
So I think that it's the duty of our government leadership to point out that we are a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, plural society, and give confidence to the people that this is a strength and not a weakness. First, that they have to do that this is actually a strength to have different communities.
I must ask this question,
yeah.
because you're an observer for these things. Why do you think that India let us all down? All as in Sri Lanka down?
Well, India's concern, I think there are two concerns. One about our growing closeness to China. I think it is a very terrible mistake that we are making in even contemplating giving those 3 islands near India to Chinese companies. We shouldn't do that. The world almost went to war at one point because of the Cuban Missile Crisis, when the Russians started bringing missiles near the US. It's something's a little, this is of course an economic project. So that is one, that was one. But secondly also, India has to be mindful of its own Tamil population, who are very emotional about Sri Lanka's Tamil people. And the provincial councils
in India.
Yes, and the provincial councils. Our leaders were talking in terms of getting rid of the provincial council and getting rid of the 13th Amendment. I think those are matters of great concern to India. But India too has been supporting us a lot. They give us so much economic assistance. And we have to be mindful of India's concerns. But as to what we should do, I think what we should do is, there are some very simple things we can do. The previous government set up reconciliation mechanisms. The Office of Missing Persons, the Office of Reparations, the Human Rights Commission, those should be strengthened and those should be implemented
Dr. Perera,
properly.
From where I stand,
yes,
the best chance we had for all of that would have been in the last government. You can't seriously expect this government's stated aims doesn't go hand in hand with that. Come on, let's face fact. That's the factual position. If there's no difference between this government and Mahinda Rajapaksa, it's the same people, different president, right? The ideology and all that's the same. In between, we had the Yapalanistas. If we wanted to achieve all this, the best way would have been then, but they got engulfed in different things.
No, the best time in a way is now, because we have a very strong government trusted by the ethnic majority who have their own insecurities. The ethnic and religious majority are very insecure. But they trust this government.
Really?
And secondly, they do trust this government still. And secondly, we have an opposition that is responsible. That we also have to. So this is an opposition that will not oppose for the sake of opposing, unlike in the past. The Yahapalana government faced an opposition that just opposed them right from the beginning and undermined their credibility with the masses with regard to national issues. That was politics. But I think this time we have an opposition which will not do the same. And if this government has the statesmanship to reach out to that opposition, I think, even for 2 years.
What statesman? What statesmanship?
Then we can overcome this problem.
Even with the pandemic, it is all, and the handling of that, it's all sort of been politicized. Where are the joint committees with the other parties and so on to fight this as one? There's none of that. There's none of that. So they don't engage. So, and they take this view that, look, we've got the majority and we're going to do it our way, in our own way. I don't
Yes,
have enough
yes.
time this evening
Yes.
to go on about what exactly they said. I can say it, but I don't have
Yes.
enough time.
Yes.
But it's a very simple observation.
Faraz, you are very right that this government thinks that they can do it their way. And this is a wake-up call to them to realize you can't. In our religions, Buddhism in particular, we talk about interdependence. We are interdependent on one another
When
within our country and with the world. And if this government has to learn that lesson, and this is the time to learn it, and if they do,
When the late, I think it was Bishop, Lakshman Wickramasinghe, wrote to President J.R. Jayawardena all those years ago in 1978, and he was writing and reminding J.R. that he promised to run this country and govern this country in a very Buddhist way. And he reminded him that part of that Buddhist way was to rule fairly and justly. And what he was saying is, don't bring these bogus claims about Mrs. Bandaranaike's civic rights and getting rid of them. So, in 1978, my hairs stand up each time I read that letter again and again and again, because that letter may well have been written today for today's context. Dr. Jehan Perera, thank you very much. Now time for that wonderful program. It's called the Primetime News from Newsfirst. Take care and have a great evening ahead. And as always, God bless you.